Okay, so you really went all out with the spooky stories for today's deep dive.
Yeah, I thought with Halloween coming up,
Perfect timing.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And you picked two cases that are, well, really well known. The Harrisville Farmhouse and the Enfield Poltergeist.
Yeah, both are just classic hauntings.
I believe.
And what makes them even more interesting is the fact that Ed and Lorraine Warren, the paranormal investigator,
Oh yeah, the Warrens.
yeah, they investigated both.
So before we get into the details, I'm curious, what was it about these specific hauntings that stood out to you?
Well, honestly,
Was it the Warrens being involved, or maybe something about the locations themselves?
yeah, I think the locations are a big part of it, right?
Definitely.
Like the setting of a haunting really shapes the whole story.
Totally.
So take Harrisville Farmhouse, for example.
Okay. Yeah.
It's this big old farmhouse.
Okay.
It's the 1970s.
Mm.
The Perron family moves in. They're looking for a fresh start.
Right, a new beginning.
Right, but from the very beginning, things are just off.
Oh, I bet.
Like, can you imagine moving into your dream home and the first thing you notice is the smell of rotting flesh?
Oh God, that's awful. I can't even imagine. That's terrible.
And that was just the beginning for them.
Oh, there's more.
Oh, yeah.
So what else happened?
It started subtly at first.
Yeah.
A broom moving across the floor on its own.
Okay, creepy.
Doors slamming shut for no reason.
Yeah, that's how it always starts, right?
Right, and this overall feeling like something's just not right.
Like a heaviness.
Yeah, like a presence.
Totally.
But it escalated really quickly, almost like whatever was there was getting bolder.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
So I remember reading in your notes that you were really interested in the history behind these hauntings. And Harrisville Farmhouse has that kind of a dark past, doesn't it?
It does.
I mean, really dark.
It really does. The property used to belong to Bathsheba Sherman.
Okay.
She lived there back in the 1800s,
Mm-hmm.
and she was suspected of being a witch.
Oh, wow.
And local rumors say that she sacrificed her own child to the devil. Oh my God. So this wasn't just like any random haunting. It's connected to this really dark figure.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have a suspected witch, a cursed farmhouse, and a family that's being tormented by unseen forces.
Yeah.
It's definitely easy to see why this case became so famous. But how did the Warrens get involved?
Yeah.
Did the Perron family call them in?
They did.
They did.
Yeah, they were desperate for answers.
I'll bet.
They wanted relief,
Of course.
and they hoped that the Warrens could help them understand what they were dealing with.
Right.
And so the Warrens arrived at the farmhouse.
Yeah.
And Lorraine, who was known for her psychic abilities, she immediately sensed this powerful and malevolent presence.
Wow. So she can just feel it.
She said she could.
So they were convinced that something really dark was happening.
Yeah,
And they decided to hold a seance to try and communicate.
they did.
A seance. Oh, that's a build move, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
You know, like it's not exactly a casual thing, you know?
No, it's not.
Especially in a place that's already radiating all this negative energy.
Right.
So what happened during the seance? Did they actually make contact with Bathsheba's spirit?
Well, it's believed they did make contact.
Oh.
But instead of calming the situation, it actually seemed to make the haunting worse.
Oh,
It
no.
really intensified everything.
So it backfired.
Yeah.
Wow.
The Warrens, they said they saw doors being ripped off their hinges.
Oh, my God.
Objects flying across rooms with incredible force.
And the family? Were they... Oh,
They were being physically harassed by these unseen entities.
that's just horrifying. It really makes you wonder if some things are better left alone, you know?
It does.
But the Perron family, they didn't move out right away, right?
No, they didn't.
How long did they actually stay in that house with all of that going on?
They actually endured years of this terror.
Years.
Years.
Wow.
They tried everything they could to break free from this haunting. But it wasn't until 1980, after nearly a decade of these events, that they finally left the Harrisville farmhouse.
That's incredible. A decade.
Yeah.
And their story became so well known. I mean, it inspired books, documentaries, and even a whole movie franchise.
The Conjuring.
Yeah, The Conjuring. I've seen it. But after hearing all this, the real-life events sound even scarier than the movie.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's fascinating how these two hauntings, you know, we're talking about two, right? Both involve the Warrens.
Exactly.
It's almost like they're connected, you know? Like their presence links these cases together.
It does. And the second case, the Enfield Poltergeist, it's just as chilling.
I bet. I remember reading about it, and it's in a completely different setting than Harrisville, right?
Totally different. Harrisville was this remote farmhouse with this dark history, right?
Right.
But the Enfield Poltergeist happened in a normal house in the middle of London.
Oh, wow. So we're going from a rural setting to a bustling city.
Like-
Okay, so we're in London. It's 1977. The Hodgson family is living their lives, completely unaware of what's about to happen. What were those early days like for them? Did it hit them all at once, like it seemed to with the Perrons?
No, it was actually the opposite.
Really?
Yeah, it was a really slow build.
Huh, interesting.
Remember how Harrisville started with that awful smell, like all the sensory stuff?
Yeah.
Enfield was much more subtle.
Okay, so how did it start?
Knocking.
That's
Knocking.
just unexplained knocking.
Like inside the walls.
Yeah.
Ugh, that's creepy.
It is. Imagine you're in your own house and you start hearing random knocks coming from inside your wall.
Oh, God, yeah, like the house is trying to get your attention or something.
Right. And it's just this unsettling feeling because you know something's off.
Yeah, but you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
The anticipation is almost the worst part, you know?
Totally. And that's exactly what the Hodgson family was dealing with.
I bet.
But as the days turned into weeks, those knocks got more intense.
Things started to escalate. Furniture started moving on its own.
Oh, wow.
Beds would shake violently.
And the family.
The whole house just felt chaotic and scary.
So both cases, even though they started differently, they both became these full-blown hauntings.
Yeah, it's wild, right?
It is. You know, you mentioned that one of the things that really stood out to you about Enfield was 11-year-old Janet Hodgson.
Oh, yeah. Janet's experiences were just, I don't know, they were different.
What was it about her case that was so different from the rest of the families?
Well, it's like whatever force was in that house really latched onto her.
Really focused on her.
Yeah, like she became the epicenter of it all.
So even though the whole family was experiencing stuff, Janet was going through the worst of it.
Exactly. Like objects would fly at her.
Oh, wow.
She said she was thrown from her bed by an unseen force, and there were even reports of levitation.
Levitation? Wait, like she was floating?
That's what people claimed. There's actually a famous photograph of Janet seemingly levitating above her bed.
Oh, I think I've seen that picture. But is there any proof that it's real? Like, couldn't that be faked?
That's the thing. It's one of those pieces of evidence that's highly debated.
Oh, I bet.
Some people believe it's genuine paranormal activity,
Right.
but others say it's a hoax.
Like maybe Janet and her siblings were just messing around.
Exactly. It's hard to say for sure.
I guess that's part of what makes these cases so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what's real and what's not.
Exactly.
But even we put the levitation aside for a second, there's another detail about Janet's experience that I found really creepy. The change in her voice.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned that in your notes, and it's honestly one of the creepiest parts of this whole thing.
It is really unsettling.
So what happened?
Well, during the haunting, Janet started speaking in this really deep, masculine voice.
Like it wasn't her voice.
It was totally different from her normal voice.
Like something else was speaking through her.
That's exactly what it was like.
And she said that the voice belonged to this old man who had died in the house.
Yeah, his name was Bill Wilkins.
So a young girl speaking in the voice of a dead man.
Pretty much.
Ugh. That's just, I don't even know. It's just creepy on so many levels.
I know.
Was anyone else hearing this voice, or was it just Janet?
No, other people heard it too.
They did.
Oh yeah, there are all these accounts from journalists, investigators, even police officers who said they heard Janet speaking in this strange voice.
So it wasn't just her imagination,
No.
and they recorded it.
Some people did.
Wow. So there were recordings of this.
Yeah, which just adds fuel to the whole debate about whether the Enfield haunting was real or not.
So we have photographs, audio recordings, multiple witnesses. It seems like Enfield might have even more documented evidence than Harrisville.
It might.
But did all of that convince people that it was a genuine haunting?
You'd think so, right? But even with all that evidence, the Enfield case was still incredibly controversial.
Oh, really? Why?
Well, I think the sheer amount of media attention, the involvement of the Warrens, and just how dramatic everything was, it made some people skeptical.
So they thought it was all a hoax?
Yeah, an elaborate one.
Even with all the evidence?
Exactly. So even though there was more evidence, it still sparked this debate between believers and skeptics.
Just like Harrisville.
Yeah.
So what did the Warrens think about the possibility of a hoax?
They were convinced that it was genuine. They believed that a demonic entity had attached itself to Janet.
A demonic entity. Wow.
Yeah,
That's a serious claim.
it is.
And they believed it was using Janet's fear to make itself stronger.
That's what they thought.
So that goes along with our whole perspective on demonic hauntings, right?
Yeah, they believe that demons often focus on one person.
Wow. So a demonic entity. Okay, I'm curious. What evidence did they use to support that? Like, what experiences did they have during their investigation that led them down that path? And what about Janet and her family? Did they believe The Warrens, did they have their own theories about what was happening?
Well, the Warrens were devout Catholics,
Right.
and they believed that demons prey on vulnerability
Okay.
and feed on fear.
So they thought that Janet, being so young, and with all the chaos in the house.
Exactly. It created the perfect environment for a demonic attachment.
It's a pretty scary thought.
It is.
But it does kind of explain some of the things that were happening,
It does.
The voice, the levitation. But if we're going with that theory, why would a demon want to torment this family? Like, what's the point?
That's a question people have been asking for centuries.
I bet.
Some people believe that demons are just pure evil,
Okay.
that they want to cause chaos and destruction.
Makes sense.
But others think they might be trying to get attention.
Oh, interesting.
Like they're trying to communicate with the physical world.
So all the weird stuff they do.
Yeah.
It's like a way of reaching out.
Maybe. And then there are some people who believe that demons are lost or confused.
Oh, wow.
That they're not necessarily evil, just desperate.
So many different theories.
I know, it's fascinating.
You mentioned in your notes that you were really intrigued by the skeptics in this case.
Yeah, I think it's important to consider all sides.
Totally. So what were some of the alternative explanations that people came up with?
Well, a lot of skeptics believed that Janet and her siblings were faking it.
Really?
Yeah, they thought maybe the kids were just trying to get attention.
I mean, kids do like attention.
They do.
And with all the media coverage,
Exactly. Probably felt pretty exciting.
I could see that.
Plus, kids are good at making stuff up.
Oh yeah, they're super creative.
Yeah.
Did Janet ever admit to faking anything?
She did, actually.
She did.
Yeah, years later, she said that she and her siblings had faked some of the incidents.
Oh, wow.
She said they were just mucking about.
So they were just messing around.
Pretty much.
But she also said that a lot of the things that happened were real.
Yeah, she maintained that some of it was genuinely unexplainable.
So even she couldn't explain everything that happened.
Exactly.
So on one hand, we have all these witnesses, the photographs, the recordings,
Yeah,
which seems to point to a real haunting.
right.
But then we also have to consider the possibility of a hoax,
That's the hard part.
trying to figure out what to believe.
It is.
But I guess that's what makes these cases so interesting, right?
I think so.
That ambiguity.
Definitely.
And you know what's really strange about Enfield?
What's that?
After 18 months, all the activity just stopped.
I know, it's weird, right?
It's like one day it was there and then the next it was gone. No explanation, no big ending, just silence.
It's almost as unsettling as the haunting itself.
Totally. So what are we supposed to make of that? Does it mean it was all fake? Or does it just make the whole thing even more mysterious?
That's the million-dollar question.
I guess we'll never know for sure.
Probably not.
Well, we've explored the Harrisville and Enfield hauntings.
We have.
We've looked at the evidence, the theories, the beliefs, and the skepticism,
We've covered it all.
and we still don't have a definitive answer.
That's the nature of the paranormal, I guess.
I guess so. But I think that's okay. I think it's good to be open to different possibilities.
I agree.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
Whether you believe in ghosts or demons or not, I think these cases teach us that there's still so much we don't know about the world.
Absolutely.
It's kind of exciting, don't you think?
It is.
So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and maybe keep a nightlight on, just in case.
Good advice.
Thanks for listening, everyone.